It's late at night. The clock ticks slowly, the minutes dragging by, each second weighing heavier than the last. The only thing standing between you and the end of your shift is the silence that fills the room. You've heard it before, quiet, almost deafening, the calm before the morning rush. But tonight, something feels off. The hum of the fluorescent lights above echoes in the emptiness of the office as you finish your last task. Your eyes flick to the clock, just a few minutes to go. The long hours have started to blur together, but you can feel it. Something's different tonight. The sound you never expected. It's faint at first, a soft scrape against the tile, but then clear as day. Unmistakable, it's the sound of footsteps, but you're alone. You glance around. The office is still, the door locked, the windows shut. No one should be here. Your pulse quickens as you listen carefully. There it is again, the unmistakable sound of someone walking, but you're sure you're the only one here. You stand up, your breath a little shallow, and you strain your ears to catch every sound. You tell yourself it's nothing, just the building settling, maybe the wind. But then you hear it again. This time, closer. What would you do if you realized you weren't alone in this office? That someone was standing just out of sight. As your heart races, you feel the hairs on your neck rise. You're not imagining it. Something is waiting for you. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. Meet Alex, a young guy who's just trying to make it through another night shift. He's been working at this small, quiet office building for weeks now, and the late hours have become routine. Most nights, it's just the hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional click of a keyboard. It's uneventful. And that's how Alex likes it. No one around, no distractions, just peace and quiet. But tonight feels different. From the moment Alex stepped in, something about the building didn't sit right with him. It's not a feeling he can explain. There's nothing overtly strange, but it's there. That strange sense that the night is somehow too still. As Alex makes his way down the long, empty hallway, the fluorescent lights overhead buzz quietly, casting an almost sickly yellow glow against the faded walls. Every few steps, the lights flicker briefly, casting shadows that stretch and twist as if they have a life of their own. The sound of his footsteps echoes through the corridor, bouncing off the walls. But it's the silence that follows that's unsettling. Alex shakes his head, trying to ignore it. It's just the building. Old buildings always make weird noises. He's been through this before. But tonight feels like something is different. He can't quite put his finger on it, but it's there, creeping up the back of his neck. The quiet is pressing down on him, thick and suffocating. He walks past the rows of cubicles, his feet tapping softly against the cold tile floor. There are no other cars in the parking lot. No one's around. That's the way it always is at this hour. And for the most part, that's how Alex likes it. But as he nears the break room, something catches his eye. He doesn't think much of it at first, it's just a chair. But when he enters the room, he sees that it's been moved. It was pushed aside, turned at an angle he doesn't remember. The back of the chair is now facing the wall. He stands in the doorway for a moment, staring at it. Something about the way it's positioned bothers him. The chair isn't exactly in the middle of the room, nor is it against the table like it should be. It's angled, as though someone was sitting there recently, watching the room. He frowns. This doesn't make sense. He's certain that when he came in earlier, everything was normal. The chair was by the table, where it always is. Maybe I moved it myself, Alex thinks, but he's not sure. He's been tired lately. Maybe he just doesn't remember. He steps forward, his shoes making the faintest squeak against the floor as he approaches the chair. His hand hesitates before he touches it. The fabric feels colder than it should be, like it's been sitting there for hours, forgotten in the cold air. He stands there for a moment, a little too long, trying to rationalize it. His breath comes out a little faster than usual, his chest tightening just slightly. The room suddenly feels colder, and the air heavier. Just as he's about to move the chair back into place and dismiss it as nothing more than a glitch in his tired mind, a soft creak echoes behind him. Alex freezes. He listens, the sound of the chair creaking still echoing in his ears. It was subtle, like the faintest whisper in the quiet room. But it's enough to make him stop dead in his tracks. His hand slowly drops from the back of the chair. There's no breeze, no open window. The air feels too thick for there to be any movement like that. He slowly turns, scanning the break room. Empty. The buzzing of the fluorescent lights overhead fills the silence again, and the distant ticking of the office clock seems louder now, sharper, like it's closing in on him. He tells himself it's nothing, just his imagination running wild. But then, another sound. This time, it's softer than the last, a low shuffle from somewhere deep in the hallway. Alex's heart skips a beat, and he turns toward the sound, squinting into the dimly lit corridor. Nothing. His breath catches in his throat, and for a moment, he wonders if he's just hearing things. After all, it's late. He's been working nonstop for hours. Maybe it's just the stress getting to him. But then the sound comes again. This time, louder. The unmistakable sound of footsteps shuffling down the hallway. The steps are slow, measured, but deliberate. Alex's eyes dart around the break room once more. He's certain the sound is coming from the hallway. But how? He's the only one here. He checks the break room door. It's shut. There are no other entrances. His pulse begins to race. He steps toward the hallway, each step a little slower than the last. The air is colder now. He's sure of it, but the building has been like this before, drafty, creaky. He tells himself that this is just the wind, or maybe the air conditioning is acting up. But the footsteps, those footsteps are getting closer. He's standing in the doorway, watching the dark corridor stretch out in front of him. His stomach twists into a knot. The steps are no longer faint. They're sharp, deliberate. Someone or something is walking down that hallway. Suddenly, a gust of cold air blows through the break room, making the door slam shut behind him with a loud bang. He jumps back, heart racing. As his mind struggles to process what just happened, his fingers grip the door frame, and he slowly opens the door, peering into the dimly lit hallway. It's still. No footsteps, no shadows, just the empty office corridor, stretching out before him. But that feeling, it lingers. That feeling of being watched, of something just out of sight. But Alex tells himself it's fine. It's all in his head. The building is old. The noises are just noises. He forces a laugh, trying to shake off the creeping chill that refuses to leave his bones. Yet the whisper in the air doesn't go away, and neither does the feeling that tonight, Something is watching him, but he can't be sure. Not yet. And so, Alex turns back down the hallway, hoping to shake the tension off. But one thing's for sure tonight: the silence feels far too heavy. As Alex tries to shake off the unease settling into his bones, he returns to his desk. The familiar hum of the office seems comforting, even if it's louder than usual. He glances around, half expecting to see something lurking in the corners of the room. But the space remains empty. The fluorescent lights flicker overhead, but it's nothing he hasn't seen before. It's just the building, old, creaky, and tired. But as the minutes tick by, the sense of discomfort only deepens. At first, it's small things, little things he brushes off as part of the long hours. He notices that papers, which he swears he had left neatly stacked just moments ago, are now scattered across his desk. He can't remember touching them. Maybe he had, in his tired haze. Maybe not. He goes to pick them up. But then, another sound, a faint thud, almost like a distant knock, comes from somewhere deep within the office building. He freezes, staring into the darkness beyond his cubicle. The noise doesn't come again, but something about the quiet after it seems wrong. Then, there's the door to the break room. It had been left open when Alex entered, but now, as he moves back to the hallway, he notices that it's closed, just enough to block the view inside. Maybe he closed it by accident when he passed by earlier, but as Alex reaches to pull it open again, the door suddenly shifts. It's locked. He can't remember locking it. With a sigh, he pulls out his keys, feeling his fingers shake as he unlocks the door. There's a cold draft spilling from the crack, a chill in the air that wasn't there before. Just as the door creaks open, an unexpected sound blasts from the intercom. Static, loud and unnerving, like something is trying to come through. But when Alex steps closer to the speaker, the static cuts off abruptly, leaving only the silence of the office again. His heart beats a little faster now. What the hell was that? He checks the speaker, the settings. Everything seems fine, but the unsettling feeling lingers. And then he hears it, a whisper, faint, barely there. At first, he thinks it's just his mind playing tricks on him, but it comes again, clearer this time. Alex. His skin prickles. The voice is so soft, so quiet, but it's unmistakable. Alex's eyes dart around, scanning the room. The sound doesn't come from the intercom. It's coming from behind him. He slowly turns, his body stiff with dread. The hallway outside is empty. The building is still, but the voice lingers in his mind. Alex. Thud. Another bang from somewhere deeper in the office, this time much louder, shaking the walls slightly. Alex jumps, his heart pounding. What the hell is happening? He takes a few steadying breaths, trying to calm himself. But the coldness in the room is getting worse. The hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Something feels wrong. Suddenly, his mind flashes back to the first night he worked here. It had been his first night at the office, and he was eager to impress his new bosses, even though the night shifts always felt empty. As he settled into his cubicle, a couple of other night shift workers, a few of the older employees, had come over to chat. They told him their own stories. Casual at first, but something about the way they spoke sent a chill through him. One of them, an older guy named Carl, leaned in close, lowering his voice as though he was sharing a secret. You know, this building has its share of stories, Carl had said, eyes darting around like he was afraid someone might overhear. Alex had laughed, thinking it was just some old office gossip. Stories? Alex asked, skeptical. Carl's face grew serious, and he lowered his voice even further. People talk about hearing things, voices in the walls, footsteps when there's no one there, strange shadows that flicker when the lights go out. A few years ago, someone who worked here, well, let's just say they didn't make it out of here at night. Not in one piece. Alex had chuckled at that, shaking his head. Sounds like a horror movie. Man. But Carl just stared at him, his eyes narrowing. You can laugh all you want, kid, but I've worked here long enough to know that some things you just can't explain. Trust me. If you're here long enough, you'll see it for yourself. Alex shakes his head, trying to clear the memory. He's not the type to believe in ghost stories. But now, in the dark, empty hallways of the office, those words come rushing back to him. His heart pounds, and a deep sense of dread fills him. He wishes he could just pack up and leave, that he's not that lucky. Not tonight. Instead, he heads back to his desk, trying to focus on the work in front of him. But the whispers grow louder, more urgent. He can hear them now, not just from the intercom but from all around him. Alex. This time, the voice is closer. It feels like it's in his ear. Suddenly, the lights above flicker once more, going out completely. For a moment, the room is pitch dark. Then, the emergency lights come on, casting everything in a dim red glow. It's enough to make everything look strange, unfamiliar. The shadows in the corners of the room seem to move and twist in ways they shouldn't. Alex's breath catches in his throat as he notices something in the reflection of the glass window behind him. A figure, just standing there, behind him. He turns quickly. There's nothing there. But when he looks back at the window, the reflection is different. It's as though the figure he thought he saw is still there, but now it's much closer right behind him. A blurry shape, distorted by the red light. His heart races as he stumbles back from his desk, his hands shaking. The whispers grow louder now. The air feels heavy with the sound of them. Alex, you're not alone. Alex can feel the cold breath on the back of his neck, the unmistakable presence of someone or something standing just behind him. He spins around, but there's no one there, just the empty office. But the cold, it's unbearable now. His breath fogs in the air. He's frozen, caught in the moment, unsure of whether he's dreaming or wide awake. Suddenly, he hears the unmistakable sound of footsteps again. This time, right in front of him. Too close. The floor creaks under the weight of someone approaching. But no one is there. And then the lights flicker one last time, before everything goes dark. As the hours stretch on, the silence in the office feels heavier, like it's pressing down on Alex from all sides. He knows the building. He knows the creaks, the hums, the weirdness of the air conditioning. He's worked these night shifts for weeks, maybe even months now. But tonight is different. The whispering has started again, only this time, it's louder. Too loud to be the wind, or the pipes, or the usual creaking of the building settling. Alex can hear it clearly now. It's a voice, soft at first, almost gentle, but it's there. He spins in his chair, glancing nervously toward the dark hallway that stretches behind him. Nothing. Just the familiar, empty offices. A flicker of light. Another. And then the lights go out completely. His heart races as he scrambles to get up. His hands cold and trembling. It's only for a second the lights flicker back on, but the atmosphere has changed. The office feels wrong. Alex tries to calm himself. It's just the building's wiring, he tells himself. But the whispers don't stop. He shivers and sits back down at his desk. The quiet is oppressive. The hairs on his neck prickle, and his skin feels tight. Something's off, but he can't put his finger on it. Something's in the building with him. He picks up his phone, checking the time. A few more hours. He can make it. He's been through worse, right? He'll just power through. That's what he's always done. That's what he's paid to do. But then, the door to the break room. It creaks open. Alex freezes. He knows he locked it earlier. He's sure of it. His heart thuds in his chest, his breath catching in his throat. He looks around the room quickly. No one's there. He glances at the security monitors on the wall, his gaze locking onto the camera feed in the break room. Nothing. Just static. He clicks through the other cameras, each one more distorted than the last. The monitors buzz and flicker as if something's interfering with the signal. A sudden bang, like something heavy being thrown across the room. Alex nearly jumps out of his tin, his pulse racing. He stands up so quickly his chair skids across the floor, eyes darting to the hallway. He's alone. There's no one here. The whispering starts again, this time clearer, more insistent. Alex. His name, spoken softly, urgently, but there's no one there. His chest tightens as he moves toward the break room. Every step seems to echo in the silence. The lights overhead flicker, casting strange shadows across the hallway. For a moment, Alex thinks he sees something, a movement. A figure just around the corner, but when he looks again, it's gone. When he enters the break room, his breath catches in his throat. The chair he had seen earlier, the one that had been moved, is now placed in front of the coffee machine, facing him. And there, on the counter, is a small, yellow piece of paper. Alex reaches for it cautiously, a sense of dread building in his chest. He unfolds the paper, his eyes scanning the faded writing, but it's barely legible. The handwriting is jagged, almost frantic. They're still here. Don't let them see you. His throat goes dry. The air in the room feels thick. The whispers in his mind grow louder, and the walls seem to press in closer. The cold shiver runs down his spine, and he quickly folds the paper back up, stuffing it into his pocket as his mind races. Who wrote this? The hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. It feels like the building is watching him, waiting for him to make a mistake. Suddenly, the security footage on the monitor buzzes loudly and cuts to static. Alex rushes over to check, his hands shaking as he scrolls through the cameras. He stops at the main entrance there. Standing in the hallway outside the building's door, there's a figure. He can't make out any details, it's just a shadow, dark against the faint glow of the emergency exit sign. Alex blinks. The figure is gone. His stomach flips. He steps back from the monitor, And that's when he hears it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind him. He whirls around. There's no one there. His breath comes out in ragged gasps. "Who's there?" Alex calls out, his voice trembling. The words barely leave his mouth before the lights flicker again. He spins around to face the hallway, but the figure he saw on the camera earlier is now standing directly behind him, so close he can feel the presence in the air. But when he looks again, nothing. Just the empty hallway. A cold sweat breaks out across Alex's forehead. The whispers are all around him now, echoing in his head. His hands tremble as he grabs the security footage, replaying the section where he saw the shadow in the hallway. This time, when the camera feed plays back, the shadow is there again, right outside the building. That something is different. The figure moves closer, slowly, deliberately, and just as Alex leans in to get a better look, the screen goes blank. Panic surges through him. He stumbles backward, bumping into his desk as he frantically searches for the power switch. But it's too late. The building is silent again. His breath catches in his throat as he hears a sound, something soft, like the scrape of a chair. It's coming from somewhere deeper in the building. And then, from the darkness of the hallway, a voice. "Alex." The voice is faint, like it's coming from a great distance, but it's unmistakable. "Run." Alex's heart races in his chest, his breath's ragged and shallow. The whispers so clear now, so close echo in his mind, urging him forward, pushing him deeper into the building. But his feet are heavy, like the weight of the darkness is pulling him down. The footsteps behind him are louder, growing faster, as if something or someone is closing in. He turns the corner, and there it is again, a shadow, so dark it almost seems to swallow the light. For a moment, his mind races. Is it real? Or is it just his own terror twisting the world around him? The shadow shifts. It doesn't move like a person. It moves like something else. It's there. It's watching. Alex bolts, his legs screaming in protest as he sprints down another hallway. The sound of the footsteps growing louder, faster. He doesn't look back. He can't. His mind is a blur, filled with nothing but the pounding of his heart, the sensation of being pursued. But then he skids to a stop. He's at a dead end. The hallway opens into an empty room, its door ajar, with no other choice. Alex stumbles inside, his breath coming in short gasps. The room is cold. The air is thick. The floor is covered in dust, and the shelves are cluttered with old office supplies and forgotten papers. But it's the back corner that catches his eye. There, partially hidden behind a stack of boxes, is a strange door. It doesn't look like it belongs in this building. It's smaller than the others, narrow, wooden, with an intricate carving etched into the frame. Without thinking, Alex rushes toward it, his fingers trembling as they grasp the cold metal handle. He pulls the door open, and the room beyond is darker than he could have imagined. Inside, the walls are lined with old photographs, their edges curled with age. They show smiling people, employees, just like him, standing outside the very building where Alex works. But something is wrong with these photos. The faces are faded, their eyes hollow, like they've been drained of life. Alex steps inside, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread wash over him. The air grows colder still, and the whispering intensifies. It's almost unbearable now. A cacophony of voices that all seem to call out to him. And then he sees it. A journal, half buried under a pile of papers. He grabs it, flipping it open, his hands shaking uncontrollably as he reads the first few lines. They're here. They watch us. They never leave. The entries get darker, more frantic with each page. Workers who had disappeared. Workers who had seen things. Things that should not be seen. Alex's stomach churns. He feels a chill crawl up his spine. The whispers become louder, more frantic. They're speaking directly to him now, his name falling from their lips in 1,000 different voices. He slams the journal shut and stumbles backward, but just as he does, the lights go out. The world around him goes completely dark, pitch black. His heart pounds in his ears, and his breath comes in ragged bursts. He's not alone. He hears it again, footsteps. But these are different. These aren't chasing him. They're steady, deliberate, slow. Closer. Alex turns in a panic, but when he does, he's face to face with it. A figure. Its shape is blurry, like a man but not quite. The air around it shifts, distorting the space. Alex's vision blurs as he stares at the entity, unable to tear his gaze away. The figure stands still, watching him with eyes that seem to pierce through the darkness. Though its face is obscured by shadows, it doesn't speak. There are no words. Its presence is its warning. A cold sweat breaks out across Alex's forehead. He takes a step back, but his legs give way beneath him. His body crashes to the ground, but he can't tear his eyes away. The figure remains motionless. Alex's pulse races. What do I do? His mind is a mess of thoughts, terror flooding every corner of his consciousness. Do I run? But no matter how much his instincts scream at him to flee, his body refuses to move. The figure is inescapable. It's everywhere. He can feel it in the air, in the space around him, closing in. And then it moves, not toward him, but past him. The figure seems to glide effortlessly through the room, its presence almost suffocating. Its gaze lingers, but it doesn't need to speak. Its eyes, those hollow, empty eyes, tell Alex everything he needs to know. The building is alive, trapped within it by the souls of those who have worked the night shift before him. The people in the photographs, the whispers, they never left. The figure disappears into the darkness, and Alex is left trembling on the floor, his mind racing, heart pounding. He can't stay here. He has to get out. But when he stands up, his legs unsteady. He hears it again, the faintest sound, the softest whisper, "Run." Before he can react, the door slams shut behind him. The hallway outside is pitch black. The only light comes from the faint glow of emergency exit signs far down the corridor. With no other choice, Alex runs. The building seems to stretch out in front of him, the walls shifting and bending as if the place itself is alive, trapping him inside. He rounds the corner, but when he reaches the next hallway, he sees nothing but darkness ahead. Every direction seems to lead to the same place, a dead end. Or worse, more whispers, more shadows. Alex's breath comes faster, his pulse thundering in his ears. He can't escape. He's trapped, forever. Alex's heartbeat pounds in his ears, drowning out everything around him. His footsteps echo loudly in the silence, the sound of his shoes tapping against the cold tile floor. He can't seem to get his breath back, feeling like his chest is constricting with every step he takes. The sense of danger has become suffocating, and his pulse quickens as though something is drawing nearer, stalking him in the dark. He races to the nearest door, a metal exit door, bathed in the red light of an emergency sign. His hands shake as he pulls on the handle with all his strength. Locked. No, he whispers, his voice cracking with panic. It can't be locked. Not now. His mind races as he tries the next door. Locked. Another. Locked. The hallway around him seems to grow darker, the shadows seeming to stretch unnaturally. The dim lights flicker once, then twice, their rhythmic pulse sending waves of dread through his body. Alex's senses are on overload, his hands trembling as he tries the next door, the next, hoping beyond reason that one will give way. And then click, the handle gives. He pushes the door open quickly and steps into the room beyond. It's a small office, filled with unused equipment and dusty filing cabinets. The air is thick with the musty smell of disuse, the kind of air that hasn't been disturbed in years. But as Alex scans the room, he freezes, the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He turns his head slowly, his eyes drawn to the window across the room. His reflection stares back at him from the glass, but it's wrong. It's not him. The figure in the reflection stands behind him, only its face is pale, stretched tight with the hollow, lifeless eyes of someone who's long since passed. Alex's breath hitches in his throat as he stares at the figure. It's an older man, his clothes torn, his face gaunt and covered in what looks like old bloodstains. He stands with his back slightly hunched, arms dangling lifelessly by his side. His expression doesn't change, no movement, no smiles. Alex spins around to face the room, his pulse hammering in his neck. No one's there. As he breathes a sigh of relief, his mind frantically trying to justify the hallucination. It had to have been the stress. Maybe he's losing it. But deep down, he knows something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong. Suddenly, he hears a soft creak, a faint shuffle of movement behind him. His heart leaps into his throat as he spins around again, eyes scanning the empty room. And there it is. The figure from the reflection stands at the doorway, his cold, dead eyes locking on Alex's. He doesn't move. He just stares. The air grows impossibly colder, the temperature plummeting in an instant. Alex's breath condenses into visible puffs, his teeth chattering with the sudden cold. The hallway is suffocatingly silent. The man's presence is like an oppressive weight pressing down on him. Suddenly, a sound, a sharp, dissonant chime rips through the silence. The old clock on the wall strikes midnight, the echo reverberating throughout the entire building. Midnight. Alex's heart lurches, his eyes widen, pupils dilating. The temperature in the room drops so quickly that his fingertips go numb. And then an unsettling voice, soft but clear, emerges from all directions. You're the next one. You're the next to join us. The words aren't just heard, they feel as though they're vibrating inside his skull. A presence so overwhelming it's as if the building itself is alive, breathing, speaking to him. The words don't come from the figure, it's as though the voice is coming from inside the walls themselves, echoing from the very foundation of the building. Alex's stomach turns. He takes a step back, then another, but his feet seem to be stuck to the floor. His hands shake as he tries to reach the door, to open it, to flee. But when he looks back at the figure, something new has happened. The man in the doorway isn't standing anymore. He's moving. Slowly, unnaturally, the figure glides forward with a jerky, unsettling motion, as though he's being dragged by invisible chains, his limbs hanging limp. His hollow eyes remain fixed on Alex, never blinking, never shifting. Alex gasps. He tries to turn, to run, but the very walls seem to close in. The air thickens. His feet feel heavier with each step. His breath comes out in quick gasps as he turns, desperate to find another escape. But the hallways all look the same. The walls close in tighter, the ceiling lowering as if to suffocate him. Another loud bang shakes the building, sending tremors through the floor. Alex spins around, half expecting the figure to be right behind him. But it's the wall. Something is moving inside them. Something is trying to get out. He rushes towards a door that's barely visible in the far corner of the hall. His hand shakes violently as he pulls on the handle. Locked. He turns to look over his shoulder. The figure is gone, but the cold remains. In the reflection of the glass door, he sees the figure again, standing behind him. Only this time there's more than one. The building is filled with them now, spectral figures. Their faces twisted in agony, their eyes hollow and black, staring at him. Their forms flicker in and out of existence. The boundaries between the living and the dead no longer distinct. And as the clock strikes once more midnight, the whispers return, now louder, more frantic, more insistent. They come from the walls, from the ceiling, from the shadows that stretch unnaturally across the room. The last whisper cuts through the chaos. You're the next one. You're the next to join us. The figure steps forward, its fingers reaching for Alex. He freezes. Suddenly, the door behind him slams shut with a deafening bang, and Alex spins toward it in a panic. But it's locked. Again. He can't escape. The figure is closer now. He can hear its breath. It's cold, dead. And just as Alex tries to break free, to scream, to run, and then, after a long moment, a final whisper, "You're one of us now." If you think this was chilling, wait until you see what happens next. The night shift doesn't just haunt factories, it extends far beyond. Stay tuned for that story.